you're watching To The Point, and we're discussing India's vulnerability or its preparedness in the face of terror. Krishnan Srinivasan, yesterday in Antalya, Turkey, the Prime Minister spoke forcefully for joint international steps to fight terrorism. In which case, isn't there a moral obligation on India to involve itself more fully in the international campaign or indeed the international war against ISIS?
Well, as far as the coalition which is actually engaging in hostilities against ISIS are concerned, I don't think that we really can play a role. This is limited either to the neighboring countries or those which have the financial resources to do this. We are a low-income country. We really are not a neighbor. We're not financially able to participate in that kind of militant, aggressive activity against ISIS. Of course, there are many other ways of cooperating against ISIS, and I think we shouldn't place all emphasis on ISIS and ignore the very many affiliates that ISIS has all over the world, including some in our own part of the world. And we are playing our part. We are discouraging actively the flow of money to these organizations. We're keeping an eye on elements who might be seduced by these organizations to join them, and we're engaging in intelligence cooperation. I think that's as much as we can do for the time being, and I think that's appropriate. Mr.
Pillai, the argument that's often made, and it's made by politicians from both sides of the divide, is that with 170 million Muslims, India has to be very careful about the role it plays in any international campaign against ISIS or al-Qaeda. And that if it does play a role that is perhaps more active, there could be some sort of backlash. Do you buy that argument, or do you think it wrongly assumes that Indian Muslims are going to be more loyal to political Islamism than they will be to India?
I think the issue is far more complicated than just that simple one-to-one equation. I think what we really have to look at, I think, which the international community is still not looking at, is where is IS getting all its funding from? There is some element of funding which they get from, you can call it within the Islamic State, some revenues there, but there are a very large number of other countries which are actually funding IS. And I think countries which are funding IS and which are also allies of the coalition against IS, I think they really have to do some soul searching and see whether they can need to take or impose sanctions on those countries that are actually funding IS. Because if they have funds, they have money, manpower is available in plenty because of the displaced population and so many people who are alienated, it's a concoction which is going to be really deadly. I think that is where you really have to target the source of funding for IS. If you can bring that down, I think you've gone a long way.
In a very real sense, Jason Burke, what Mr. Pillai is saying was said today in the Times of India by Dilip Padgankar, who pointed out at the confusion, if not contradiction, in the West's approach to fighting ISIS. And I'm going to quote him to you. He says, "You can't battle the forces of the Islamic State and simultaneously seek a regime change in Damascus. You can't fight jihadi terror and continue to cozy up to countries that finance, arm and train terror groups." Would you agree with that?
Yes, largely. I'm no spokesman for US or UK governments. I think there's obviously an inherent tension between fighting ISIS and fighting Assad at the same time. As for the countries that cozy, or the West cozying up to countries that sponsor terrorism, coming from an Indian commentator, I'm guessing that he's talking about Pakistan. Direct sponsorship of ISIS or money flowing from states to ISIS is not something that I certainly have come across. There are private donations coming from some areas of the Gulf to ISIS, but they are a minimal amount of its overall financing, which largely comes from taxes and oil and such like within the areas they control. So I think there's a amalgam of different elements there. One is a regional complaint based on Delhi's long-term visions of Pakistan, and the other is a comment, a valid one, on the complexities of Western policies in Syria. I don't think either comment is particularly helpful, incidentally.
Mr. Dulat, let me focus for a moment on India's principal concern, which is LET, Jaish-e-Mohammed and the other jihadi outfits that operate out of Pakistan. We know that the world recognizes that there is a Pakistani involvement, whether it's at the official state level or at the unofficial state level, behind these terror groups. But at the same time, the same West also needs the cooperation of Pakistan as they hope to ease out of Afghanistan, and for a variety of other strategic reasons. This poses a dilemma for us, doesn't it?
No, not really. I think we need to deal with this a little more smartly. Of course, we borne the brunt of it from Pakistan. There's no denying that. But I think when we are talking of cooperation and we are talking of an envoy, I think we should also look at Pakistan. Why we cannot engage and talk to Pakistan and at least cooperate on intelligence and security matters.
Would they be willing to cooperate?
I don't think that.
But would they be willing to cooperate? Because our suspicion, and it's more than a suspicion, is that their security agencies and intelligence agencies are the ones that are supporting and funding the LET and Jaish who attack us. So you're asking them to cooperate against what they consider their interests.
See, once you start talking, it's not as if intelligence chiefs in the past have not talked, and the few who have talked have themselves said that their experience was not bad; it was positive.
But that was 20
in fact,
years ago.
Recently, there was a long article.
But that was 20 years ago.
But not really. Yeah, but why not try it out now? That the situation is better now than it was 20 years ago, as far as we are concerned. Whether it was Punjab or Kashmir, today we are much better off.
Okay,
so if it worked 20 years ago or 12 years ago, why would it not work now?
Let me put
why
that
not
point
try
to you.
and institutionalize this?
Let me put that point to you, Sandeep. Are we, in a sense, incomplete and inadequate in our preparedness and our battle against terror? And I'm talking about LET, Jaish and all the jihadi outfits in Pakistan. If we do not negotiate and talk to Pakistan and have a dialogue with them all the time, is that therefore something that should be seen not as part of a peace process, but as part of the policy of tackling terror?
Karan, how do you talk to Pakistan? I mean, that's the point, because as we all know now that Pakistan has a sword and shield approach. They use the shield of this nuclear umbrella that they have, and they have the sword of terrorism, which every couple of years they use to inflict terror attacks, whether it's in Mumbai or it's in Delhi.
So you completely disagree with Mr. Dulat's point?
I entirely disagree with Mr. Dulat, because I mean, why go that far as far as Mumbai? Because we just had a terror attack in Gurdaspur, let's not forget, where they tried to target a passenger train, and this is this year, 2015, where they tried to target a passenger train, a bus, and they finally came into a police station in Gurdaspur, which is far away from Jammu and Kashmir. This is the heartland of India. I mean, what do you explain? And we have GPS tracks leading all the way back to Pakistan, and there is clear involvement of state actors in Pakistan.
So there's no point in talking to their security agencies?
How do you, I mean, Pakistan has perfected the art of, running with the hares and hunting with the hounds.
Mr. Pillay, as a former Home Secretary, what is your advice to the government at the moment about beefing up its preparedness and reducing India's vulnerability to terror, whether it's LET and Jaish, which are the more potent threats, or whether it's the possibility of something like ISIS through some of its affiliates, as you possibly mentioned, in Nepal and Bangladesh attacking us? What would be your advice to this government?
My advice would be don't lower your guard. Please strengthen the police and your intelligence, and unless you are strong internally, you can't really expect anybody else to support you. You have to look out for your own national interest. Please look after it yourself without depending too much on others.
Very quickly, are you therefore agreeing with the point that Jason Burke made, that you need to have ears on the ground, you need to embed your police and your intelligence officers inside communities so that you know and you have your finger on their pulse?
Yeah, I agree with Jason Burke. I think our biggest weakness is our state polices, and once the state polices really step up their what I call professionalism and efficiency, I think you will find a big difference in the entire approach to law and order, terrorism, and so on.
On this point, Krishnan Srinivasan, where there's a bit of a difference of opinion, and that's putting it euphemistically between Mr. Dullat and, say, Sandeep Unithan here in studio with me. As a former Foreign Secretary, what's your feeling? Should a constant, unbreakable dialogue with Pakistan be part of the way we tackle the terror threat? Or would it be pointless because their very agencies are the ones who are sponsoring it?
I think one of the great difficulties of Indian foreign policy over the past few months has been Pakistan. I think that we've lost one or two opportunities which we should have taken to engage in a discussion with Pakistan when they were evidently willing. And I think that now we've reached a situation where possibly it is true that it's going to be a dialogue of the deaf for the time being. But we should be open to every opportunity, I think, to re-engage Pakistan. I think this is one of the infirmities in our foreign policy at the moment, and it's a great difficulty for us also in dealing with terror, as you said. I think that we need to find ways of engaging Pakistan, however hard it is.
Mr. Dullat, as a former head of an intelligence agency, and intelligence is a very important part in your preparedness and handling of terror, or your ability to avoid it, what is your advice to this government? But I have to ask you for a quick answer because we're running out of time.
And I've said this repeatedly, that we should engage and we should institutionalize this engagement. And I beg to differ with Mr. Pillai that, you know, that the state police services are not up to the mark. Wherever we have fought terror, it has been with the help of the state police forces, whether it is Punjab, whether it is J&K, whether it's the Northeast, wherever it is. Without the local police, I beg to differ, you cannot deal with this problem.
Very quickly, Jason, because I have only 20 seconds, you keep as close an eye on Pakistan as you do on India. Would dialogue with Pakistan be an effective, sensible way of tackling the threat from terror, or would it be counterproductive? But you have to answer in literally 15 seconds.
Anything that can be done to strengthen civilian powers and civilian representatives in Pakistan will help both the regional security environment and that within India.
In other words, you're saying quite clearly that the Dullat approach is perhaps
talk to the Prime Minister, talk to the civilians, talk to the judges. Yeah, the problem is that in Pakistan you have two interlocutors, one which both have very different views. You need to strengthen the ones who are friendly to you. That will be the civilian representatives, the elected representatives and civil society, and hope that they can balance those who are not friendly to you.
That's a very clear answer. My thanks to all my guests for joining me, and if you have been, thanks for watching. Goodbye, good night.
Nisagama manipamaga nipamaga sanipamani sapasa जहाँ तक यादें याद आती रहेगी